The year is 1347. Ilara, 15-year-old with ice-cold hands, stands at the threshold of her new husband's stone cottage. Every seam whispers of an inescapable fate. In this world, women are commodities measured in livestock and land. Ilara's childhood ends at sunset tonight. That red smear is the ultimate currency. It validates Ilara's worth and her family's honor. No blood. Her parents face disgrace. In this suffocating darkness, the ghost of Thomas Aquinas looms. A century earlier, he declared in his Summa Theologica that God permits only one position. Man on top, woman beneath. Faced any other is against nature, a sin worthy of hell. Inside, the last candle gutters out. Ilara lies still, eyes wide in the dark, listening to Cedric's ragged snores. The blood on the sheets smells metallic blood of lies, blood of shame, blood of a world where bedrooms are battlefields. At sunrise, that sheet will be hung for the village to see. They'll point to it as proof of joy. None will see the tear in her soul wound. She, like her mother and grandmother before her, must stitch shut with silence. Canon law is crueler. No intimacy on Wednesdays, Fridays, Sundays, Lent, or saints' feast days. No touch during menstruation, that crop-killing poison in medieval texts. No relations during pregnancy, nursing, or for 40 days postpartum. Even kissing too passionately is a crime. Obey every rule, and couples may couple just 50 days a year. Cedric can return her like defective goods. Today is when Stafford's bought. Cedric reeks of ale. He grabs her wrist. She knows resisting means a beating. The law lets husbands discipline wives, but yielding damns her soul to hellfire. This is the medieval woman's double tragedy. In bed, victim of men. At judgment, sinner before God. The pressure drives some girls to prick their fingers or hide chicken blood in the straw. Ilara squeezes her eyes shut, clinging to memories of lavender fields back home. But Cedric's liquor-soaked breath invades her nostrils. She thinks of her mother dead after birthing her youngest brother, blood-soaking a bed like this. In this century, 1 in 3 women die in childbirth. Ilara no longer fears sin. She fears becoming the next statistic. When Cedric's calloused hands rip through her heirloom nightshift, the truth sears her. This stone hut is no home. It's a slaughterhouse, and she's the lamb trust for sacrifice to a system that weaponizes sex, cages women in marriage, and trades daughters like cattle. None know that the maidenhead preached by priests is a fantasy. Medieval science imagined it as an impenetrable wall, ignorant that it could tear from horseback riding or hauling firewood. For Ilara, the shame of disappointing her family terrifies her more than physical agony. Cedric reaches for the leather cord at her neck. His hands are calloused from plowing, fingernails black with soil. Ilara holds her breath. Her mouth has whispered warnings about wifely duties, now feel hollow. How could mere words prepare her for what waits in this cramped room where sex isn't connection, but ritual sacrifice? Cedric, a man nearly twice her age, moves toward the crude wooden bed. The air reeks of damp straw and stale sweat. Outside the thin walls, drunken men roar with laughter. They bang pots with wooden spoons, sing lewd songs about bedroom duties, and refuse to leave until they hear her cries of pain. This is no wedding. This is a transaction. Ilara's father traded her for Cedric's 3 pigs and half a cur of barley. The scratchy shift Ilara wears coarse, wool dyed muddy, brown was stitched by her mother. It once belonged to her grandmother, then her mother, now her. A medieval wedding night holds no privacy. It's public theater, legal proof of a contract. Before Cedric touches Ilara, the bedding ceremony has already unfolded. Guests haul them into the chamber, shove them onto the oak bed, and laugh as they strip their outer garments. Neighbor women sing folk songs laced with innuendo about birds nesting. Blacksmiths nudge Cedric toward the trembling girl. When the door slams shut, shadows linger in the cracks. They're listening. They need the sounds of pain, proof that Ilara's fortress of virginity has fallen. Only her choked sob will satisfy them. Come, dawn. The blood-stained bedsheet will be displayed like a battle trophy. But the true puppeteer tonight isn't Cedric or the mob. It's the church. Ilara counts silently. Cedric flips her onto the straw like a sack of grain. The rustling stalks laugh at her fate. The mob's laughter cuts off abruptly. They've heard what they came for. Outside, the autumn night freezes. Snow crunched under Ilara's bare feet as she stumbled to the frozen creek. 3 months had bled past since her wedding night, each dawn etching Cedric's contempt deeper into her bones. Now, rust-colored stains bloomed on the straw mattress. Menstruation, the monthly curse. She scrubbed the rags frantically in ice-crusted water, knuckles splitting open. Blood swirled into the current, a treasonous confession. There, beneath a gnarled elder tree, she found Rowan the midwife, branded a witch for saving women, the church condemned. Old Rowan's single eye gleamed like wet flint. Bleedin's no sin. Girl, she rasped, crushing pennyroyal leaves. 'Tis men fearing what they can't own. She pressed a cold, twisted root into Ilara's palm. Mandrake, carved like a screaming woman. Tie this to your thigh. Tames the wandering womb. Nonsense. In the forest's throat, Rowan spilled secrets like forbidden wine. how to soak sea sponges in acacia gum to block cedric acid, how to count fertile days by the moon's curve, how pennyroyal tea could bring the moon blood if swallowed before dawn. But mind the dose, Rowan warned. Tansy flowers, bleeding yellow pollen on her fingers. Too much, and you'll sleep in the churchyard. Ilara, remembered Marta, the blacksmith's daughter, buried last spring, after drinking tansy, paced her corpse, pale as wax, blood crusting her shift. The priest had called it God's judgment on Eve's daughters. If Cedric discovered her uncleanliness, he'd chain her in the barn again. When Cedric mounted her, she imagined its knotted shape burning him. She drank pennyroyal steeped in stolen rainwater. The bitterness, a secret triumph. Cramps twisted her belly like eels, but she smiled into the straw. Last time, he'd spat scripture. Her touch withers crops, her glance rusts iron. Words coped from the priest's leather-bound DC. When their cow Agnes died after Ilara milked her while bleeding, Cedric didn't slaughter the sick beast. He slaughtered Ilara's dignity, dragging her before the village to be pelted with rotten turnip. In the stone cottage, Cedric's snores vibrated the walls. Ilara crouched by the hearth, stuffing dried moss into strips of her mother's burial shroud. Yet dusty scrolls and monastery libraries insisted female pleasure was sacred for conception. A woman's seed must spill for life to quicken, decreed Mandino di Liuzzi's. This truth became Ilara's damnation. When the miller's son raped a shepherd's daughter, and she swelled with child, the bailiff scoffed. She screamed, but her body sang. No babe grows without a woman's pee. Ilara knew the lie in her marrow. She knew only pain and the dread of pregnancy. Cedric's climax was a snarl. His role offer a reprieve. Did the seed take? He'd demand. She'd lie silent, praying to St. Margaret for barrenness. Moonlight caught the ragged scars on her wrists, gifts from last month's purification when Cedric used a birch switch to drive the devil-esque blood from her. Medieval science declared menstrual blood poison. Pliny the Elder's natural history, revered like gospel warned it could sour wine, kill crops, and birth serpents. But the true terror lurked inside her. Physicians from Salerno to Paris preached that women were mutilated men, their wombs rabid beasts roaming their body. Ilara felt it, some nights a phantom claw scrabbling beneath her ribs. When she hauled water buckets uphill, it slipped downward, burning her thighs. When Cedric choked her for oversalting porridge, it climbed toward her heart, stealing her breath. The village barber surgeon's cure was a horror. She'd straddled a cauldron of boiling lavender while he chanted prayers, steam scalding her thighs to lure the womb home. Another time, he'd rubbed rotting badger liver on her lips to stench to repel the womb downward. Cedric's demands never ceased. He took her nightly, a grunting ritual as joyless as mucking pigs. One October dusk, reeking of pig blood and despair, Ilara fled to whisper. Ilara hid the mandrake root beneath her breast. Then the nightmares came. Incubi, not dreams, real demons, according to St. Thomas Aquinas himself. Ilara learned it in confession. Father Aldous' breath sour with sacramental wine. Incubi take male form to rape women. Succubi steal, men seed in female. Guys, they breed monsters in God's sight. One frozen, January night, Ilara woke, a shadow, darker than pitch, crouched on her chest, reeking of sulfur and spoiled milk. Cedric snored beside her. She couldn't scream, couldn't move. The phantom womb had finally fled, ripped out with her dead son. Outside, steel sang against stone. Cedric was sharpening his skinning knife. Ilara's fingers crept to her belly, where Pennyroyal's ghost still burned. In the darkness, she smiled a cracked, bloody thing. The poison had worked after all. Through the cracks, his voice slithered like a snake. Cheaper than a divorce. Fresh bride from Lambert Hill. ... Double quotes, fingers like ice livers, pried her thighs apart. Incubus? Her mind shrieked. When dawn leaked through the shutters, the weight vanished, leaving bruises like violets on her hips. Father Aldous recoiled when she confessed. Did you feel pleasure? He hissed. No, it was agony. Demons feast, only unwilling flesh. He took one look at the stillborn and lunged. Witch, you killed my heir. Hispus sent Rowan crashing into the hearthstones. As the old woman fled, Cedric turned to Ilara, panting. His eyes dropped to the mandrake root that had tumbled from her grip. Understanding dawned like a hangman's sunrise. Poisoner, he breathed. His punishment was swift. 40 lashes at the village cross. Her back flayed raw while farmers watched. Her belly swelled like rotten fruit. Cedric strutted like a cock among hens, boasting of sons. But terror coiled in Ilara's gut one and 3 women died birthing. When the pains began at midnight, Rowan appeared her leather satchel clinking with church-sanctioned relics, a splinter of St. Margaret's bone, a virgin's girdle scrawled with Latin prayers. But as Ilara screamed on the birthing stool, Rowan pressed the mandrake root into her palm and whispered forbidden words. Bone to bone, blood to blood, womb to earth, ... Double quotes. For 20 hours, Ilara pushed and tore. Finally, a blue-lipped boy slithered onto the blood-soaked straw. Still, silent. Rowan's hands trembled as she wrapped him. Afterward, he forced her to squat over smoldering sage until the smoke choked her. "Burn the demons, stench out," he commanded. As the villagers dispersed, Ilara glimpsed Rowan's face. In the crowd, the midwife's single eye blazing with fury. In that moment, Ilara understood. Womb or demon, men would always own her body's story. Spring came, and Cedric's seed finally took root. Cedric burst in, reeking of ale. That night, chained again in the barn's killing cold, Ilara pressed her forehead to the frozen dirt. Snow whispered against the roof. The dungeon's cold bit deeper than winter. Ilara curled on the straw-flecked stone, shackles chafing her ankles. Father Aldous loomed, crucifix swinging. "Did you poison him, bad demons? Steal his manhood with curses?" You betted, Cedric, on red days, Lent, Ember days, feast of St. Cedric had taken her whenever he pleased against the wall, in the pigsty, once over his plow-horse's saddle. The church's obsession with policing sex baffled her. Canon law, criminalized, fornicated. "He pinned me like a sow at slaughter." The bishop's scribe flinched, quill hovering. Ilara spat blood on his boots. Farmers clutching pitchforks crammed the space, breath steaming in the cold. Bailiff Godric read the charges. The truth was simpler. When Cedric lunged with his knife, Ilara froze. Only then did she see him, Lord Renard, Cedric's liege, Lord smirking from the judge's bench. Memory flooded back. Last harvest, Renard cornered her in the barley field. His silk gloves gripped her throat as he took her against a hayrick. "Scream, and I'll tell Cedric you seduced me," he'd whispered. "They'll stone you before Now, Renard pointed a ringed finger. "She offered me her body thrice, a wanton harlot." She'd shoved the mandrake root down his throat. His choking gasp was the sweetest sound she'd ever heard. Cedric's blood still crusted her fingernails' dark crescents, whispering of the barn's chaos. When the village elders found him gutted like a stag, skinning knife clutched in his dead hand, they dragged her here screaming murderers. Parchments unfurled across the oak table. Thomas Aquinas' 50 Holy Days sex calendar. A priest stabbed a bony finger at the grid. Now, in the bishop's prison beneath St. Agatha's chapel, she waited, not for trial. Ilara's fate hung on the ordeal by water. For torture, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Torchlight flaring against a bronze device wielded by black-robed men. The Catherine wheel, its spikes gleaming like fangs. "Confess your sins," but medieval justice demanded spectacle. The virgin matron appointed to examine Ilara's body. In a freezing cell, the woman probed between her legs with silver tongs. Hymens intact. Impossible. A year wedded, Ilara bit her lip till blood flowed. Cedric's assaults had been brief, brutal penetrations never deep enough to tear Mistress Isabel sneered. "Either you bewitched him, impotent, or you're still virgin." Both verdicts meant death. The church's bedroom calendar at dawn. They hauled her into the chapter house. Intercourse permitted only on green days. Ilara stared blankly. Morning sex. Nakedness, wife in top position. "Your womb birthed death because you fornicated like a beast." Father Aldous thundered. Ilara's laugh scraped her throat raw. A new horror arrived at noon. Mistress Isabel, adultery's double gallows. The trial convened in the tithe barn. Murder of Cedric of Black. Carnal union with an incubus. Witchcraft via mandrake root. But the crowd murmured at the fourth accusation. Adultery. Medieval law was a serpent eating its tail. A wife's adultery equals death. By stoning a lord's adultery equals fine 3 sheep, since Cedric was dead. Renard walked free. God's jury, they dragged her to the millpen. Ice cracked along the banks as Bailiff Godric bellowed. "Bind her right thumb to left toe." If she Ilara knew the trick. Buoyancy meant guilt. 2 weeks in the dungeon. Ilara used them to plot. Survival meant drowning. As ropes tightened, Rowan's voice cut through the mob. "Wait!" The midwife shoved forward, clutching a woodcut illustration, a naked woman curled in a tub. From De Secretis, "See how her wandering womb bloats the belly? It'll make her float like a bladder." The crowd gasped. Father Aldous paled. Canon lawyer, Durand arrived from Paris, velvet robes, reeking of rosewater. His mission, investigate if Cedric was naturally impotent, which would annul the marriage, making Ilara's adultery impossible. Medical texts were wholly Rowan pressed. Tester after moonblood. When the womb's dormant, a delay. The impotent's inquisition blood warmed her cheek. More followed. Drox turnips, dung, through swollen eyes, she saw Renard nod at Bailiff God. The executioner's flint aimed true at her belly. On the eve of her retrial, new torches flared in the corridor. "Marriage valid." "Beg me," he breathed, hands slithering under her shift. "I'll claim you bewitched me. They'll burn you quick, not stone." Ilara sank her teeth into his wrist. As he howled, she whispered, "I carry your child." Ilara's adultery charge stood. The examination was obscene. "Free me, or I'll name you before God." Witnesses, Cedric's drinking buddies, swore he stiffened at tavern whores. Relic tests. Ilara forced to touch St. Thomas Aquinas' finger bone. While describing Cedric's member, Ilara stood bound to the pillory rowans, mandrake root, hidden in her mouth. Renard watched from horseback. Bandaged hand clenched, Father Aldous raised a fist-sized flint. Body inspection. A giggling barber measured Cedric's corpse's limp phallus against parchment. Diagrams Duran finally ruled. Potency confirmed. That night, Renard visited her cell. His face curdled. A bastard heir threatened his lands. Liar. Sworn on St. Agatha's eyes, she hissed. Stone justice. Dawn bled across the village square. Let the first stone purge her sins. The crowd hesitated. Then a mudclod struck Ilara's temple. Thwack. Not stone on flesh but arrow, through leather. Godric collapsed. Renaud's feathered bolt in his neck. Chaos erupted. Horses reared. Ilara spat out the mandrake, slicing her ropes on the pillory's splintered edge. Rowan grabbed her arm. Now, they sheltered in a charcoal burner's hut. Rowan brewing yarrow for the festering wound. Ilara's fingers traced the broken skin around her shackle. Scars flesh memories of Cedric's barn, the bishop's dungeon, the pillory ropes. They fled toward Whisperwood as the mob bayed behind them. Eras hissed past. At the tree line, Ilara stumbled pain, lancing her side. Ice reflected her face, gaunt, scarred eyes old as Rowan's. She touched the arrow scar. Ilara whirled, grabbing a stone, but it was only a poacher's boy, gaping at her tattered dress. You're her, he breathed, the witch who killed Blackamoor. They say you bed the devil at Crossroads. Somewhere, a wolf howled. Ilara bared her teeth in something like a smile. You survived? The water seemed to whisper. For what? Let them whisper. Devils were kinder than husbands, kinder than priests. She turned toward the charcoal hut where Rowan waited, toward the bitter herbs, the midwife's grimoire, the hard freedom of the outlaw. Renard's second bolt jutted below her ribs. Rowan hauled her into the bracken as horsemen thundered past. The child? Rowan rasped, pressing moss to the wound. Ilara laughed, blood bubbling on her lips. A lie. My moonblood came yesterday. The hollow hearth chastity pleases God. Blood slicked the snow behind him. Ilara watched. Hollow. These men thought pain purified. She knew better. Pain was just pain. Winter deepened. One frozen twilight, voices echoed through the trees. Naked men whipped their own backs, chanting. Fornication defiles the earth. When the wound turned putrid, Rowan packed it with maggots. They'll eat to death, she muttered. Ilara drifted in fever dreams. Cedric's knife glinting, Renard's silk gloves gripping her hips, Father Aldis's flint whistling toward her womb. Always the wandering womb a beast, finally knowing its way out. On Candlemas, she limped to the forest pool. A twig snapped. Ilara lowered the stone. Snow began to fall clean and white, bearing the bloody tracks behind her. The arrow wound festered like a cursed. Ilara dreamt of Renard's face rotting off his skull, maggots spilling from his eye sockets as he whispered, hangful, killing God, certain. She woke screaming in the charcoal burner's hut, Rowan's calloused hand muffling her mouth. Outside, sleet needled the frozen earth. Hounds, the old woman hissed. Renard's men, they fled deeper into Whisperwood. Ilara, limping, her side weeping, yellow pus. At dusk, they found the stone womb, a cave hidden behind a waterfall, its walls carved with ancient spirals. Inside, the air hummed with the warmth of a dozen women. A fire pit glowed, illuminating faces gaunt with hunger and defiance. Margot the Weaver, branded for adultery when her lord raped her. Little Agnes, who'd stabbed her father as he tried to sell her to a brothel. Their leader was Mother Bronick, a one-eared crone, who'd survived 3 witch trials. Welcome to Hell's waiting room, she rasped. The Book of Blood. Bronick thrust a leather-bound codex into Ilara's hands, its pages, brittle as dried leaves. Trotula of Salerno's work, she said, stolen from a bishop's pyre. Ilara traced the illuminated letters. To Passionibus, inside diagrams of wombs, labeled like battle maps, recipes for poppy milk to ease birth pangs, herbal abort. But when priests call saving women witchcraft, she gestured to Agnes grinding tansy flowers. We become what they fear. Asterisk pennyroyal plus save and juniper equals 2 parts, death, 1 part, freedom. Trotula, sc marginalia. Say 1100 AD. Bronick's finger stabbed a woodcut of a woman straddling a birthing stool. We're midwives, not murderers. That night Ilara learned the 3 rules of the stone womb. No real names, no men past the waterfall. Kill to protect the book. The wound in her side deepened. Rowan packed it with honey and spiderwebs, whispering. Flesh remembers steel. Ilara's fingers found the arrow scar, a ridge of angry tissue. So does revenge. The bishop's bastard Joanna came at the wolf moon, a girl of 14. Face veiled in When Bronick pulled the cloth away, gasps rippled through the cave. Joanna's left cheek bore a fleur-de-lis, brand the mark for priests' whores. He said, I tempted him. She wept. Then he put his seed in me. The real horror unfurled when she lifted her skirts. Her belly swelled, taut, and round. Whose child? Bronick demanded. Kill the bishop's bastard, whispered the scar at her ribs. Kill his sin. But Rohan was already mixing. Ergot and black cohosh. Late term, she muttered. This'll be a butchering. Bishop Alara held her hand, remembering her own dead son. We'll bury him where Duval's hounds won't dig. But as she lifted the bundle, a slip of vellum fluttered out, sealed with the bishop's insignia. If it lives, I'll hang you as its demon mother. Breathe. Little bird, she murmured. Blood slicked the girl's thighs. Rowan's hands moved swiftly, pulling out a blue-lipped boy stillborn like Alara's. Joanna sobbed into Alara's shoulder. Silence choked the cave. Let him choke on his bastard, she said. You've painted targets on every woman in the Shire. Duval's the same bishop who'd condemned Alara to the Catherine wheel. We buried the child at Duval's gate, the man who preached virginity while impregnating peasant girls. Joanna clutched Bronick's arm. He's hunting me. Wants to cut the babe out before it cries heresy at baptism. Alara's mandrake root felt suddenly heavy in her pocket. They laid Joanna on Trotula's birthing stool. When the cramps hit, the girl's screams echoed off the stone womb. Bronick wrapped the tiny corpse in Rowan's shawl. To my son's whore. By noon, his soldiers were raiding cottages, dragging women to the ducking stool. Confess the witch who did this. Burn this whelp. D. Alara crushed the note. The corpse on holy ground. They crept into Lambert Hill at Metennis. The bishop's palace loomed its gargoyles. Alara dug a shallow grave beneath Duval's bedroom window, planting the stillborn like a cursed seed. Around its neck, she hung the bishop's note. Dawn broke to chaos. Duval's screech shattered the frost. Spawn of Satan on consecrated earth. Alara watched from Whisperwood's edge. Bronick shook her head. The bloody ledger retribution came on. Alara was gathering yarrow when hoofbeats thundered through the wood. She scrambled up an oak as Renard's men burst into the stone wam's clearing. Inside the cave, his men smashed jars of herbs, shredded Trotula's pages, and as Alara's breath stopped, dragged out Joanna. The girl fought like a wildcat, biting a soldier's ear. Renard backhanded her. Where's the murdering whore? Where's Alara? Found their pest hole. Renard dismounted, his bandaged hand cradled like a rotten fruit. Gone to hell to warm your seat, Joanna spat. She sagged, eyes locking with Alaris through the leaves. Renner less-mouthed. Renard drew his dagger. Then you'll greet her first. Alara unfolded the single page she desalvaged from Trotula Spooka recipe titled The Silent Sleep, Hemlock, Belladonna, Poppy Tears. Flames swallowed the stone womb, crackling like the devil's laughter. Didn't move, she etched it into her bones. The way Joanna's blood blackened the snow, the way Renard wiped his blade on her hair, the way Bronick's one-eyed head rolled when a soldier hacked it off. Into its oats, she mixed mare's madness, ergot fungus, that caused hallucinations. When Renard rode to hunt tomorrow, the beast would bolt off a cliff. Alara climbed to the solar, where Renard's armor hung like a hollow man. She smeared rancid badger fat inside his gauntlets of poison that would seep through skin. Let him taste red first. The blade slid between Joanna's ribs, a soft, wet sound. Alara didn't scream. When silence fell, Renard tossed a torch into the cave. Only Rowan's horse chant. Through the window, Alara watched him gorge on roast swan, his bandaged hand stroking a serving girl's thigh. Drunk, arrogant, unarmed. For every man who thinks a womb is his property, the witch's court. Alara and Rohan buried the dead. At midnight, 7 women in a mass grave beneath the elder tree. No prayers, no crosses. Earth to earth, ash to ash. Their tormentors' bones will smash. As dawn bled, for Renard, Rowan asked. Alara stared at Joanna's grave. They found Renard feasting at Blackamoor Manor, Cedric's hall. Now as Rowan slipped Himbane into the wine cellar. At the stables, she saved her darkest art for his stallion. Too slow, Rowan muttered as they melted into the woods. Alara touched Joanna's blood, dried black under her nails. The last fire winter tightened its fist. On Lady Day, Renard's soldiers cornered them at the charcoal hut. Arrows pinned Rowan's cloak to the door. Alara dragged her inside as fire arrows thudded into the thatch. The book, Rohan choked. Flames licking the walls. Mustn't burn. Alara shoved Trotula's last page into a clay jug, sealing it with wax. Bury it, at the crossroads. Where the old gods listen? Smoke clawed their lungs. Rowan thrust a pouch into Alara's hand, mandrake root, pennyroyal seeds, saying, Run, tell them we bled but didn't break. As the roof collapsed, Alara dove through the back window. Heat seared her back. She ran without looking back, Rowan's final scream chasing her like a vengeful ghost. At the crossroads, she dug with bleeding hands. Down went the jug, Trotula's wisdom entombed in dirt. Above it, she planted a sprig of wormwood. Grow bitter, she whispered. Lacosta's snow began to fall, smothering her tracks. Somewhere, hounds bayed. Alara turned north toward the rumors. Toward the place where the Black Death was eating whole villages alive. Let it come, she thought, her breath frosting in the dark. Let it burn this rotten world clean. The dead outnumbered the living. Alara walked a road of ghosts, her boots crunching over frost-rimed corpses dumped like firewood. 1348. The great mortality had come to England. Villages stood silent, doors marked with red crosses. The air reeked of vinegar, decay, and the sweet stench of mass graves. She pulled her death-maiden shroud, tighter dipped in wormwood and wine to repel. Miazaman stepped over a child clutching a dried rosemary sprig. Plague charms. As useless as prayers, at Blackmoor's edge, crows feasted on Renard's body. His festering hand had finally killed him, septicemia blackening his veins before plague pustules could bloom. Alara spat on his swollen face. Joanna sends her regards. The Death Maiden's oath Lambert Hill was a charnel house. Pyres smoked in the square, burning corpses day and night. Sister Beatrice, a nun whose wimple hid plague scars, handed her a bone saw. Cut the black butte. Pray while you carve. Only two places thrived: the tavern and the cathedral. Alara found work in the Pesusa converted stable where victims writhed on blood-soaked straw. Medieval cures were butchery. Emerald paste. Crushed gems worth a king's ransom. Rubbed on lymph nodes viper wine. Poisonous snakes fermented in momsy bleeding. Leeches applied to anemic flesh. Alara worked silently, sharpening her scalpel on a tombstone. Each dawn, she had a different medicine. Rowan's grimoire memorized before the flames took her. Hawk, Bronick said. Find you, She shoved a blood-crusted scroll into Alara's hands, a fragment of Trotula's buried book, unearthed by desperate hands. When Sister Beatrice turned away, Alara slipped Iotopoltuses beneath dripped willow bark tincture for fever, whispered St. John's wort incantations over the dying, burned juniper, plus sage. Wash with vinegar. Isolate the sick. One twilight, a hand gripped her wrist. A young woman, sweat-drenched and delirious, pointed to Alira's arrow-scarred. Pestilence lives in bad air. Trotula's plague protocols. C. 1100. Alara stared. Science, not superstition. The bishop's last rites. Duval's cathedral became a fortress. Gold chalices glinted as he preached to empty pews. God's wrath falls on sinners. Repent or perish. She smeared rancid tallow on her skin. Between coffins of saints, she found Duval's secret hoard, hunched her spine, and shuffled into Behind the sacristy, she heard Duval's hissed orders. Lock the gates. Let no beggars near the well. Behind the altar, though his priest wore beak masks stuffed with plague-repelling herbs, Alara infiltrated using a corpse's identity mod. The simple, a mute beggar woman, dead in the gutter, used to slit the throats of plague goats in purification rites. That night, she slipped into the cathedral crypt. Sacks of silver crates, a Venetian wine, a chest of emerald plague cures, and beneath a reliquary of St. Sebastian's arrow, Joanna's flirtless brand, mounted like a trophy. Alara took only one thing: Duval's own consecrated knife. The flagelant's gift, a new horror, arrived at Michaelmas. Flagelant processions. Hundreds of barefoot men, their backs shredded by iron-tipped whips, chanted, "End God's wrath through blood." Among them, Father Aldous, his priestly robes replaced by rags, eyes fanatical. When Duval refused them entry, Aldous screamed, "Even the church is corrupt. God abandons us." They marched into Lambert Hill, flinging infected blood and pus into crowds. Flagellants stormed the gates. Alara melted into the riot. Plagues. Sister Beatrice raged, barring the pest house door. Alara watched them circle the cathedral, lashing themselves raw. Chaos erupted. The reckoning in the charnel pit. Duval fled through the crypt's tunnel lined with skulls leading to the charnel pits. Alara cornered him beside a mountain of rotting bodies, his beaked mask askew. Maud, know the witch. Guard Snolly the dead listened. Alara threw Joanna's brand at his feet. She named her son before she died. Augustine Duval. The bishop blanched. Lies. I'll send you to hell where you belong. He had your nose, Alara hissed, advancing. And your cowardice? Duval drew a jeweled dagger. Alara crouched beside him as blood bubbled on his lips. Blinded, he stumbled and impaled himself on a plague cart's iron spike. They fought atop the corpse pile. Duval slashed her arm. Alara rammed his plague mask, shattering the glass eyepieces. Gurgling, he slid down, pinned like a beetle. Where is she? My son. Alara leaned close. Burnin' in hell. With you. She left him screaming into the pit. The last sacrament, Lambert Hill, burned. Flagellants torched the cathedral. Believe in fire purified. Alara staggered back to the pest house ablaze. Sister Beatrice chained to the door by fanatics, which she healed without God. Alara charged through flames. Inside, children whimpered in smoke. She hacked at Beatrice's chains with Duval's knife. Leave me, Beatrice coughed. Save them. Behind her, Beatrice's final prayer, Rose Liberami. Dami, ... Asterisk, a girl clutched her sleeveless, whose mother died, pressing a mandrake root into her hand. Alara dragged out 6 children as the roof collapsed. In the cemetery, Alara tended burns with the last of Rowan's honey. Will hell take us now? Lilith whispered. She touched her scar the wound that birthed vengeance. But Lilith's eyes held only terror. Elara studied the burning town, the dead bishop, the orphans shivering in No, little bird, Elara said, snapping the mandrake root in two. We build a new world. Here. Epilogue. The wandering womb spring came late. In a bandit plague village, Elara tilled soil salted by fear. Lilith planted pennyroyal and St. John's worts in the churchyard. Tend it with knowledge, not fear. Women found them fugitives, widows, the branded and the broken. They rebuilt not a sanctuary, but a college. Not a curse, a place where life begins when we choose. On the longest day, Elara unearthed Trotula's jug at the crossroads. The page was intact. The womb wanders not from malice, but from neglect. Trotula de passionibus Mulierum. That night, by firelight, Elara traced the diagrams for Lilith. This is a womb, not a beast. Beyond the wall, flagellants still chanted. Plague carts still rolled. But in the garden, mandrake bloomed white as bones. Elara of Blackamoor was dead. Hawk, the healer, lived.